record this if the session lets me do that. And I'm going to give a fair warning here. My last 3 Zoom calls, I have frozen, or at least on my end. So I don't know what the heck is going on. I've had my whole family log off of every device in the house. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But if I go cold in the middle of this, the connection should still be good. You guys just chime away and share, and I'll tune in with my phone a few minutes later, and Brother Richard can jump in. But let me get us started here with a prayer this morning, and then we'll jump into our agenda. So we'll pray together. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. And I am taking for the prayer a portion of the fundamental principles of the Xaverian Brothers. This is the first few lines of this are a very common expression, very common language amongst the brothers, but I think just given everything you guys are dealing with, it kind of hits home. So, dear Lord, as you prayerfully reflect on the past, assess the present, and ponder the future with one another, be considerate of this history and of this ministry. Yet, like Riken, foster an attitude of openness to the needs of the church and your world, and a willingness to follow Christ wherever he leads. You are called to a life of constant searching. Let the developments and changes of your times be a source both of confidence and challenge to you. Loving God, we thank you for this day and the opportunity to serve you in the mission of Catholic education. We ask your blessing on each of us as we enter into the mystery of your ongoing shaping of our life. Guide us and our school communities as we face the many difficulties that lie ahead. We ask this through Christ our brother. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Well, again, appreciate all of you coming to the table for this conversation, and again, thank you for everything that you're doing. I mean, news and stories are just constantly changing on this. So, there were a few questions that were sent in, which will open up, but I wouldn't mind you kind of each, if you want to state by state here, where are you guys at? I mean, are you intending to have fall athletics? Is your school coming back? I mean, if a few of you want to kind of chime in from each of your regions, because I know some of you are, again, your states down in Montgomery County. There's a big debate going on right now between the governor and the county health commissioner. So you got all that politics to be dealing with. And I know some of the public school systems are shutting down as well, and how that impacts athletics. But if you guys want to just kind of jump around, where are you guys at in terms of fall athletics right now?
Here in New York City, we're still waiting for the governor's announcement. We're expecting it today. But we know the public schools have delayed full sports. I know my school, Nazareth, is going remote learning for the first quarter. So we won't be participating in full sports either.
I know here in Connecticut, we're planning for a full return for our academic year with kids back in the building just the week before Labor Day. For athletics, we're pretty much on as scheduled. Our football program, it's kind of interesting to think about, but they're going to be continuing these little cohorts of 10 to 15 kids in groups for, until September 11th, which then we can on paper gather as a team and start practices. So everything kind of got bumped back about a week for football. We're going to play a truncated season on paper right now. Again, that's all subject to change, with only six games regionalized in pods, with 2 possible regional games at the end for like a little bit of a playoff. Soccer and cross country here are going to kick off on the 24th, but again in those pods similar to football, and then on September 11th we can gather as a whole community.
My name is Craig Luvis. I'm the AD at Mount St. Joe in Baltimore. Right now, Mount St. Joe is planning the academic return at a 50% capacity hybrid model. So our first day of school will be August 31st with 50% of the student body. So we're going to have half on Mondays and Wednesdays, the other half on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Friday is sort of a distance day where everyone is remote. The DePaul program kids will come to school on Friday, which is like our special ed program, and there's teacher office hours, and it's, I guess, sort of like a catch-up day on Friday. We play in what's called the MIAA. It's the private school league in the Baltimore metro area. Right now, we're in a 1-month delay with fall sports slated to start on September 1. So there'll be no tryouts or practices during the month of August. Our board will meet next week. I anticipate them extending the delay farther into the fall. I don't really realistically think we'll be starting any fall sports until at least late fall or early winter. That has not been announced yet, but that's sort of my expectation. I think it was kind of smart how they played it down here. They sort of just bought themselves a little bit of time to see what all the different school districts were going to do, and then they're reassessing next week.
Steve Howes, good counsel. As Patrick mentioned, we're in the middle of a legal battle with all the private schools in this county that's gotten national news. So we announced last night that we are going to go all virtual until October 1st, or until things maybe play out sooner. Who knows? But so we're kind of in a holding pattern right now. We had been doing small pod workouts. Our league announced there was no competition until January 1st for league, but if schools could, by their jurisdiction, have maybe little friendlies on a Saturday potentially, that would be allowed. But we would like to just be able to get back to open, like Craig was saying. That was going to be our model until this whole political legal battle began. So
I'll follow up and just keep it in the same league and somewhat in the same region. I'm John Lombardo. I'm at St. Mary's Riken. And this is my first year, so if I can do it now, I can do it whenever. I'm an expert by now. Yeah, we're obviously in the same league in the WCAC, so we're doing the same things that Steve is doing. As far as we had our little pod workouts going that ended yesterday, we opted to continue those, even though the WCAC delayed, just because we hope to, as Steve was saying, pick up with some internal athletic activity of sorts, just to keep everybody engaged, obviously healthy and safe in other ways, mentally and physically, but engaged. We'll be going back to school in a hybrid model in the cohorts of A through K, by last name in the alphabet. A through K will go to school in classroom learning on Monday and Tuesday, and then L through Z will go to school on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we will have an all virtual enrichment type day on Friday, where almost like electives and additional benefit will be added to, for instance, a student athlete. I'm teaching, I guess that's what I'll call it. I'm teaching some athletic leadership council type things, or college recruitment process type things. And so some other add-ons for Friday virtual days. Our students do have the option, if they don't feel comfortable to go in classroom mode, they can stay home and choose to go all virtually. I don't foresee us having any external competition, even though it is technically allowed by the jurisdictions. I just don't see us going and playing anybody or doing anything or having anybody on campus quite yet. I think we got to take care of our little bubble first and then move out from there. But we will have some athletic, hopefully, we plan to, we're in the process of that now. We hope to have some athletic participation and activity with our athletes starting in September, maybe the middle of September.
Anybody got any scenarios that are different than what's been outlined there? Some of you?
Yeah, I guess real quick, here in Kentucky, our state association has come out and said that fall practices for all sports can begin August 24th, but they've set a timeline for our sports, soccer and cross country can start competition on September 7th. Then football will be first Friday, September 11th. So basically they pushed into the football season 4 weeks. So we've cut out those first 4 games, but then they added on an extra week towards the end and pushed back the playoff system. So we could potentially play 9 football games this year. We're leaving our open date still as open, so we'll play 8 as far as it stands right now. However, the state association is meeting again, having a board of control meeting on August 20th to decide if that's what they want to continue and move forward with or to make changes again. Here in Kentucky, a lot of our opponents are the public schools, and there's a battle similar to I've seen in other states that they're trying to decide if, I'm pretty sure they're going to start school, at least the first 6 weeks is all NTI, all online. They may extend that obviously, and so they're trying to decide, you know, if they do go straight online, are they still going to allow for fall sports to happen? That meeting is supposed to happen on August 18th. So, you know, we're stuck in limbo this next week or two to decide whether or not we're playing in the fall, then 2, deciding if the public schools don't play, you know, that's, looking at my football schedule, that's, you know, 4 of the 8 games against public schools. So it's going to be a scheduling nightmare if they decide not to play, and all of a sudden all the privates and the surrounding counties are now looking for extra games to play. So to be determined.
Thanks, Denny. Any others before I pose a few general questions?
Yeah, in Massachusetts, and Mike and Jack can chime in as well, we got pushed back to September 14th as a start date for fall sports. We're anticipating updates from the MIA. We're hoping this week, in the governor's office, as far as, you know, what that will look like, and some of the scenarios they threw out, you know, either going full bore or moving some seasons around. So we're still in a bit of a holding pattern there. For Malden Catholic, we are going with a hybrid model, so similar to some of the other things we heard. We're going Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, with Wednesday being our you know, modified schedule for AP classes and leadership and those sort of things.
So let me throw this out. One of the submitted questions that came from you guys is, and I know we talked about this in the last time we had you on the call as well, locker rooms. How are you approaching locker rooms right now? Was one of the questions posed.
I can say during our pod workouts, we did not allow any locker room usage at all. That we let one set of bathrooms by the training room open. Other than that, it was strictly go to your workout and leave campus. So if we are able to get back at it and we're in the building, we would probably retain that policy as well. If they were in the building, then we would stagger when they would go in the locker room distance.
We're going to do something very similar with staggering the individuals using the locker room just to minimize the amount of people that are in that space at one time. But what we're also doing is really not even assigning lockers. The kids are going to have a designated spot to drop off their equipment in the morning. Then when they come down for practice, they would gather their equipment, get dressed, go out to the fields. However, instead of returning back to the locker rooms, we're just going to have them bring everything home with them and then return the next day. So hopefully the idea is that parents are cleaning all their equipment every single day. And then there's no one using any lockers, so there's not going to just be that log jam of stuff inside their locker rooms. So again, kids will bring everything out to the fields. If it rains, we're going to provide them trash bags to put their their valuables in there so that it doesn't get destroyed.
Where would they change into their practice gear?
You say that again?
Where would they change if they're in school, and then where would they change into their practice gear?
We're still going to use the locker room for them to get into their equipment, but then they're going to bring everything outside to the fields. So again, we're going to stagger when they're in the locker rooms. They're not going to store any equipment in there. They're just going to use it for the privacy of changing into their equipment for that afternoon. Again, this is all contingent upon actually having a season.
Matt, is that the same policy as the school locker room, a locker policy overall? Because if we get back in hybrid, our school is not going to use lockers at all. Are you guys doing the same?
So they're more than likely not going to be using lockers. There's discussion about that right now. You know,
Tom Cato.
even for PE class, if we're outside, you know, for PE, they're going to have the same type of setup there where they're actually going to store their stuff in the gymnasium. We bought blinds for all the windows in our gymnasium, and they'll change inside the gymnasium, and then we'll go out to the fields for PE.
At Mount St. Joe, our boys are not going to have the use of their hallway lockers in this hybrid model. The school considers it a high-touch area and kind of a log jam, making social distancing difficult. So there would be no lockers if we're playing sports, which I don't think we will be. So.
So, can you guys hear me okay?
A little choppy, Susan, but give it a try.
Is this better?
Now, you know what might work sometimes? Hit the stop video so we won't see you, but it might not put as much of a strain on your Wi-Fi, so we might hear you better. Now give it a shot.
Is this any better?
Yep, now we can hear you clear.
So we're in the same situation at St. Bernard. The difficulty we have is that we have middle school and high school sports, and then we have an hour between 2 and 3 where the building is going to be open until 3 o'clock, but then you've got these kids who have to be somewhere between 2 and 3 if they're not in a club or activity. This is the discussion we're having right now. So we may have a situation where we open the gym, I have the kids social distance, I send one team to the locker room at a time to change and then go right outside. So I have to make sure all my coaches are there on time for practice, and the kids can't go and change until the coach is there to take, control of the kids once they're outside. So it's going to be a little tricky, and we're trying to still work that out because we expect probably between middle school and high school about 100 kids, boys and girls, that we kind of have to, get through this process. And then again, we're not going to use lockers, and the kids typically, our lockers aren't big enough to store anything in because they were the teeny tiny lockers that we had in 1969 for gym clothes. So we have to find an area that they can bring their backpacks loaded with their athletic gear in it. And I might use like the wrestling room space for kids to just drop off stuff. And then so those are all the tiny issues that we're all trying to figure out. And then, use the water fountains. I'm thinking we're putting in another tubeless refill water bottle station so the kids can fill their water bottles before they go out to practice. That's one of the other things we're talking about. And then how much supervision do we have actually in each locker room while the kids are in there? So I can supervise the kids in the gym, but we're going to probably need a female in the girls' locker room and a male in the boys' locker room to supervise while the kids are changing and then sending them out to the fields. So we're just kind of going through the steps to try to figure all this out at this time.
Thanks, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a number of other questions that were submitted, but let me instead open it up just in case, because again, I know from the time people send stuff in, things are constantly changing on this topic. I mean, are there other questions or topics you all want to ask of each other before I come back to the list I have in front of me?
I don't know if this is as much as a question or it is definitely a topic and just a shared idea. So we just, like I said, finished our little 3-week pod type workout segment for our fall athletes, and then boys basketball chose to participate. Girls basketball did not. And just in recapping and reading through my own notes and thinking about it as we move forward into what is so hopefully the next phase for the middle of the month of September, I thought going into it, and we thought going into it, that staffing in terms of just your admin and hands on deck that get things like trusted admin that and trained that understand the policies and the procedures. And maybe it's just the kids at St. Mary's Riken, but I'm sure all of us would say our kids challenge the rules anyway. And it's just because they're so happy to see each other as well. I don't know if you all have had any athletes on campus. I know some of you have, some of you haven't, but just the amount of hands it takes on deck to get that pulled off and done safely and correctly. The supervision, the trained supervision is really, really, I thought I was overestimating that. And I'm now going in on this end for the next phase. I've learned, I think I've underestimated that, honestly. And that'll be really the determining factor for how much we can do in the next phase, is how much supervision can we guarantee is trained and ready to go. Because it isn't, again, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but for us, it's not as simple as put the baseball team down on the baseball field with the baseball coach and just limit their numbers. You know, there's just so much that goes into it that's been turned upside down. So I don't know if I'm open to suggestions, creativity, you know, in terms of staffing and supervision that you all have used. Again, that was our biggest concern going in, and we didn't have any major issues with it, but it was all hands on deck all the time, Monday through Thursday, 3 to 9 p.m. every single night. And, you know, just looking for ways to get better with that for the next phase.
Yeah, John, sorry. Yeah, just to go off of that, you know, we have the same problem. These kids been locked up for months. The second they see each other, they want to hug, handshake, you know, and you don't know they're going to do it until after they've done it. Then he's like, guys, we got to separate, but it's already too late at that point. So, I mean, it's very difficult situation and very hard to handle unless we allow like 2 kids, one on one side of the gym, one on the other, and we could see that they're about to go to each other and start yelling. But, you know, it is, you know, they haven't seen each other, some of them, since March, you know, and these are their friends and stuff. Also, by the way, I want to introduce Al Pratt. He was just on the call. That's our Dean of Student Life. He just was on here trying to get some ideas too on how to help us handle everything as well.
Yeah, we've noticed the exact same thing. We did some football workouts with the pods. We were really, through the month of July, we were really confident with our plan. And I think that was, you know, what John and everyone are saying. That's the first thing we learned, is that, you know, the best plan on paper is just that. And the execution is really what's most important. And we dealt with the same thing. Boys that hadn't seen each other in months, kids that see the mask as a nuisance, almost, you know, it was constant. It was pull it up, separate 6 feet. It was such a challenge. Your coaches have to be on board 100%. I know it's difficult for them because they're trying to teach, they're trying to coach. And then this is just another added layer of challenge on top of, you know, trying to get something really, truly beneficial out of their workout. So that was really my takeaway. We in fact decided to cancel our last week of football workouts. We were going Tuesday, Thursday evenings through the month of July, and we just canceled the last week, partly because we don't think it's really beneficial to just keep bringing them out when we don't see a season necessarily happening in the next few weeks. But the other part of that was just the execution. We found that a lot of these boys, maybe their families aren't very strict about safety protocols. A lot of these kids are involved in travel teams or club teams that are just pretty much full-blown playing tournaments right now around the Maryland area. And it's going to be much different when they come onto our campus. So it's really, there is a training element to this that is like nothing any of us have ever had to deal with before.
Speaking of training, I just have a question. I know the NFHS has a free COVID-19 course. Are you guys or anybody making their coaches have to take that?
Hey, yeah, I was gonna say, Bill, looked like you were nodding your head.
Yeah, so I was going to follow up on the whole workout thing. Less of a concern was the amount of staff we had out there, but it really was teaching that culture of safety. Our first workouts, I think I spent more time, talking about separating and distance, and finally just came out and put the onus on them that their role is to keep safe. So now, the breakdowns are wherever they are on the field, and the little things, and it's really changed. But you're right, every team that comes in, we're gonna have to retrain. As far as, and we have a list of the protocols just to get them to that point. So it's reiterated. And part of that for the coaches is when they're wearing their mask at all times, but two is the Federation's course has to be completed and on file with us.
And I'd like to piggyback on that just a little bit. What we're seeing here is almost the total opposite. When we have them here on campus and they're with our coaches, we're able to control them and set that example. It's when they leave our gates is what the issues we're having. We've had athletes test positive and been exposed, and we've all traced it back to, either a parent getting it from work or, the AAU travel baseball tournaments, the kids going to summer parties. So it hadn't been exposure for when they're here on campus. It's what they're doing outside our walls. And that's what we're struggling with, trying to, just preach to them, make better decisions, stay home. You don't need to go be hanging out with your friends at this point. We almost left it at, hey, if you want a season this fall, you have to have the commitment and you have to be strong, stay at home, and don't be hanging out in groups of people. Because that's what we're finding. That's where we're getting our exposures and our positive tests.
In the wheelhouse of this conversation that we just had, if there is some negligence and liability issues tied up in all this. I don't know how much you have or have not had these conversations with your school administration. We did have the presidents and principals on a phone or on a Zoom last week with Christian Brothers Services, who does insure the majority of our schools, not all of our schools. Nazareth, I'm not sure. Nazareth, I think you might go through the Brooklyn Diocese, whoever is your insurance carrier. But I would encourage you, if you haven't had some of those conversations, to get with your admin team and talk about some of those protocols that Christian Brothers Services is recommending. And I may forward it to you as well. I already sent it to the administrators. The insurance company has put out this guide for schools on the steps and modifications that you should be taking. They're coming at it from the angle of to avoid lawsuits and to avoid claims. But Christian Brothers Services has said there have already been 46 claims made, COVID-related claims. Most of them right now are nursing care facilities that they insure as well. But the nature of it is people are getting coronavirus and they're blaming the organization for not taking the proper protocol steps. So that's just something on the athletic front. You guys should make sure that you're also, meeting those recommendations put out by your insurance carrier. And also, just as a heads up, your trainers, your athletic trainers, are held to a higher standard as it relates to negligence and liability compared to, say, the math teacher, because in theory they are a certified health professional, and the coverages for your school are much smaller if your trainer or your school nurse has any negligence in a COVID situation. I think it's only a $2 million max coverage to the organization, to the school. versus say if your math teacher, makes a mistake and puts kids together and they get sick. Christian Brothers is insuring up to $10 million for those claims. So I hate to bring that in, but that's just a reality of it too, that, for everything that you guys are doing and trying to navigate with these back to school things, we've got to be cautious of liability issues as well. So any thoughts or questions on that? And hopefully your administrators have some more input if you need some help on that. Other questions you got for each other? Otherwise, I'll throw a few more out that come to me. Somebody asked, are you treating the freshman and JV seasons any different than varsity? And I think that's coming from the angle of just limiting the number of athletes that are congregating in spaces.
Our state association in Kentucky is looking at having one non-varsity contest per week, which obviously, either cuts out freshmen or, they're playing every other week. But that's something they're voting on. It was brought up at the last Board of Control meeting, and there really wasn't a consensus, so we're still waiting to see as it relates to that. But that's something they're looking at, is a one non-varsity contest per week.
We haven't, in Connecticut, we haven't really discussed the sub-varsity levels just yet, but just curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on limiting the amount of athletes that you have at your away contests or even home contests. There's those kids on every team that really aren't going to get into any varsity game. Are you going to allow or limit the amount of athletes that you have, go to your away contests or even at home games?
Yeah, Matt, we did. Again, it was more direction from the state association, but they limited varsity football to 60. And we have well over 100 on our varsity squad. Soccer's 24, cross country's 10, which basically all looks like the state tournament representations. So they kind of went off those numbers. But that's what we're dealing with too, is a lot of people play 4 years to dress on Friday nights, and unfortunately, maybe this year we're going to have to tell them that they can't, because we're limited to the number of uniforms we can have on the sidelines.
Other questions?
I had one about just travel in general. If you've thought about it when things do get rolling. Situation we've run into is golf has been given the green light. They've already started. Nothing really changed in their season. Issues we were having is obviously there's early tee times, and our golf team usually stayed either the night before if they had to get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Obviously we told them, no hotel rooms. We've we even didn't provide them travel to the tournaments. We almost asked them, or asked the parents rather, if they would step up this year and transport their kids to the tournaments. And then if they felt like they needed to stay, ask the parents to almost front that bill for the hotel room and have the whole family stay, rather than the school buying that for them. So I was just curious, has anybody thought about how you're going to handle travel when you do get going, and what limitations you might see there?
I don't know about any of you guys, but in New York, and I'm wondering if you guys had got restrictions on how many kids you could put on a school bus or charter bus, because we haven't gotten none of those restrictions as of yet.
We have, at least for us, ours is 1 per row right now, or 1 per seat, excuse me, 1 per seat. That has been elevated. It used to be 1 per seat in every other row going diagonally. So if you went down the bus going literally from just going across the alleyway and then skipping a row, going diagonally. But now we've moved and elevated to 1 person per seat in each row.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be doing that here, because that won't give us 6 feet.
So, and it's to clarify, not in each seat. If it's a 2-person bench, 1 person on that bench, but in each row.
So basically, if you're looking at to say a football team, you're essentially looking at doubling your buses, basically, right?
Yes, and I foresee, just to Danny, your first point, or back to that travel and roster cap point, I think that's for us, at least for what I foresee, is the transportation piece, and away games being a bigger issue than obviously home games, just because of that exact reason.
Any other thoughts on Denny's question?
And we don't really travel much, so I wish I could help you out with that one. But I do know that our state is not allowing any outside travel outside of Connecticut at this point.
Well, let me just finish on one last one, and it's not a question, but resources, apps, materials, programs, anything that you guys are using that seems to work really well that you'd want to share with this group. You know, when we had the administrators on a call last week, a lot of them were sharing some apps that they've found that are going to help with, you know, whether it be contact tracing or parents, you know, doing health screenings at home. But, you know, as it relates to anything, disinfecting equipment or anything in particular or unique you're implementing with your student athletes that you'd want to share that you think would be a good resource for others?
We purchased it's called the Healthy Roster for athletic trainers. And I'm telling you, it's been a lifesaver through all this. It's separate than the system that the regular school is using. It's more geared toward the athletic training aspect of it. But through this, there's actually a tab for COVID inside of this. So, you know, anybody that is exposed or goes for a test, you know, our athletic trainers are able to make notes. Best part is the parents can sign up and the coaches can sign up. So anything that's inputted by our athletic trainers, it sends notifications to myself, to the parents, to the coaches. It's been a huge addition as far as communication goes, just with, you know, all the protocols, because they keep changing daily. So it's an easy and quick way to get it out, and it's not very expensive. I think for our 3 athletic trainers, it ended up being, you know, $1,600 for the year. But there, you know, there's an app for phones. There's obviously the desktops you can use, and it's been a lifesaver through all this.
Thanks, Danny. Can we just find that online if folks are interested? Healthy Roster, if they just Google
Yeah,
it?
and I've got when we were going through the purchasing process, I've got a little presentation that I'll email everybody that was sent to us.
Great, thank you. Yeah, other things like that. Any other ideas you want to share with each other just as a good resource?
We did nightly electrostatic cleaning. We got a commercial company that does BWI Airport and Dulles Airport to come in after workouts, and that was a huge help. Our maintenance staff would come in after they electrostatic clean, and then the maintenance staff would come in and do a thorough cleaning as well right after that, knowing that it was disinfected. It was something that our parents really appreciated that effort to do. So.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
I have one question. If your school is going to be hybrid and the kids opt out for remote, are you going to allow them to participate in sports? Is your school going to allow them to participate?
Susan was shaking her head no. Matt, shaking your head yes. Is that
It's all over the place.
Yeah, we're going to allow it here. It's Xavier.
Yes, we were going to allow it if we get back into that hybrid. We were. And there's another school in our league that actually is going all virtual And they are definitely going to allow small group activities and athletic workouts after the school day to keep the kids engaged and mentally and physically active.
Susan, how about you guys?
Our plan at MC is to allow it. We just don't know the plan yet until we know what the state's going to say. I know in our Catholic conference meeting, we talked about varsity practice and every day, but, sub-varsity not, just in their days they're in school or specific weekends. But that's our plan.
Yep, thanks, Bill. Susan?
We talked at our meeting yesterday that, we're going back full time. If a child decides to go to just do virtual schooling, then they will not be allowed to do extracurricular activities. Obviously, that makes sense. So if a kid's not going to come to school for the classes, they can't participate in extracurriculars. But I'm not sure if we go back to full virtual teaching. I don't know what the athletic component will be. I don't know what Connecticut is saying right now. Matt, do you know? No.
Matt, I think Susan was wondering if you might know if Connecticut Athletic Association's weighing in any on, again, if a student opts virtual, whether they can or can't participate, whether the state association had an opinion.
I'm sorry, I was distracted for a second, Susan.
No problem, no problem.
They are allowing that as a district by district decision.
Great question though, Jack.
Well, I mentioned to our principal, I said, why would you want to fight that fight with the parents? If they want to have them come back and play, why not just let them play? And her thought process was, if they do come back and play, and should they contract COVID, then they blame the athletic department. It becomes kind of a sticky wicket with the athletic department. So I don't know. I would say half the schools in our league are saying yes, and the other half are saying no.
That's that got posed to us yesterday, to the principal and myself yesterday for the first time, and obviously we had thought about it, but we had not quite thought it all the way through and planned it out. And at St. Mary's Riken down in Maryland, that got posed to us for the first time, and that was my only concern. Is the common denominator between bringing a positive test then back to campus is athletics. And as I've seen, when things won't go to plan, or now all of a sudden it becomes real, people are looking for something to blame. And that's added a lot for us.
Yeah, that's going to happen. We all know that. I mean, it's going to happen. And one of our schools, if not all of our schools across the country, I mean, somebody's going to get sick. It's going to spread, and you're going to have claims. Again, that's where I go back to Christian Brothers Services fully expects it to happen. But, not that, we want to lean back on it, but, there is a max $10 million coverage per incident with no limits to the number of incidents that Christian Brothers will cover. The only exception being if your licensed healthcare professionals screw up, then the coverage is a lot less. And again, I'm not trying to say that to say, hey, just go about business as usual, but to give a little bit of peace of mind that they'll be ready to defend you when it happens, not if, but when it happens.
Does any, speaking of liability, does any AD on the call have additional liability for themselves professionally?
Just through
The National Federation.
Yeah, the National Federation and our
National.
state association offers you a little bit, but not much to probably cover you.
Yeah, and I would check with your administrators. I mean, for all my years of school administration, that's always been, a lot of companies will try and sell you that out of fear, but Christian Brothers would defend you. I mean, if you go and do something absolutely massively egregious, off the wall. That's a whole, something illegal. That's a different ball of wax. But, under 99.9% of these, ways you're dealing with your communities, you're going to have Christian Brothers or whoever is your insurance carrier standing behind you as an employee of the institution.
Just to go, Nazareth is going virtual for the first quarter, like we said earlier, so we will not be doing sports. Like I said, we don't feel that if it's not safe to go in to learn, it's not safe to go in for athletics. If we go, or when we go hybrid, we will participate then, and we'll divide the practices as such. We haven't really approached if we are hybrid and a kid or a student decides to say, even though we're hybrid, I'm gonna stay home and do remote. But I would figure if they can't come to the building because they don't feel safe traveling in public transportation or whatnot, then they would not be allowed to participate in athletics also, like Susan said.
Any other questions, ideas to share, or any follow-up?
I have a question.
Yep.
Has anybody lost or thinking about they may have to cancel or cut a team just because the expense of, let's say, travel? Like we said, a football team now needs 2, maybe 3 buses as opposed to 1. Has anybody had or addressed that topic of cutting a team?
No.
No, we've even talked
No.
about, if that comes down the line, and assuming freshmen would be low man on the totem pole there, we would consider freshman football just kind of inter-squadding each other all year, just so they have something to do and to participate rather than, just saying we're not doing anything at all.
Similar, we'd look for the sub-varsities to have a smaller schedule. I wouldn't want to lose anybody. One point, and one of the reasons we're looking to allow the hybrid kids to participate is I've had 3 students let me know they're opting to stay with their club team this fall because of the uncertainties to what we're going to do. So my fear is, and this is what I discussed with our nurses, these kids go off and do their club team. We have no control over, their safety protocols, and they come back into our building and hanging out with our kids. We don't know, what they've been exposed to. Whereas if we can keep them even at a sub-varsity level on a limited basis under our guidelines, then at least we know we're taking the precautions to keep them safe.
Anybody who is working out, has your school decided what to do for travel for those cases that Bill just brought up? Like if they go to a volleyball tournament out of state, are you requiring them to quarantine in any way, take a test before they come back to work out?
Yeah, we had three of our football guys go down to Florida for a camp, and my response was Florida of all places. But they did have to quarantine for 14 days and had to get a negative COVID test.
Bill, that's as much a Massachusetts requirement these days now. Governor put the stipulation in, if you're coming in from most states, you got to quarantine for 14 days. All right, well, you all have everybody's email addresses. If other things come up, other questions, feel free to hit a reply all and throw the question out or shoot it to me. I'm happy to help facilitate any which way I can. If there's anything further our office can do on any of these or help track down some answers to questions, feel free to leverage us as well. And frankly, we all know, who knows where we're going to be a week from now. That's constantly changing in so many ways, but on behalf of the network, and again, on behalf of the brothers, we continue to get, at least I do, I get a lot of notes from the brothers when they read the Friday General Aid updates in the XBSS newsletter. They continue to be so proud of you guys for everything that you're doing to try and serve these kids during all this craziness. So thank you all. And again, feel free to reach out if you have questions, but appreciate your presence here today. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, guys.
Have a